One of humankind's great challenges has been the gulf that divides humans and animals. How do you communicate with animals, especially ones that play a part in our daily lives when we share no common language? Clearly, it's still a challenge. It still matters. The longing for kinship with a horse, for example, is ancient, and in this highly technical age, perhaps more powerful than ever. As this book attests, Monty Roberts has not just set out to change the way we communicate with animals, but, as a result, how we communicate with each other. Recently, thousands of corporate officers, from Disney, Xerox, General Motors, AT&T, for example, have gone to hear this horseman speak at his farm in California. It's a tantalizing notion, the horse as teacher. The lessons Monty Roberts learned from horses may one day influence the way that managers and workers, parents and children, relate to each other. What works with horses, he says, also works with humans. The name of the game is communication, and at that, Monty Roberts is an old pro. He was only 7 years old when he made a remarkable discovery, that you can communicate with a horse by reading his body language and sending similar signals back. He would eventually call this silent tongue the language of equus. He would codify it, break down its grammar. I count it his greatest achievement to show the world that when a horse does this with his body, it means something quite specific, and that when a human does that with his body in response, that action also conveys a particular message to the horse. Now 62. Monty wonders if another boy in another era ever chanced upon similar knowledge. Horses are such good teachers, he says. There had to be people before me. Was this other boy rebuffed, as Monty was most of his life, for trying to learn the language of horses, or was he just ignored? You can put a message in a bottle at sea, but the odds of someone reading it are remote. To know even a little of traditional horsemanship is to appreciate the nature and extent of Monty Roberts's achievement. History has had its gentlers, too, but they have been few and far between. 300 years before the birth of Christ, there lived a Greek cavalry officer called Xenophon, meaning a person who speaks strangely. He wrote a tiny classic called The Art of Horsemanship. Educators with the British Horse Society call Xenophon's observations as relevant today as when written. Be firm, but not harsh, Xenophon urged, and never lose your temper while dealing with a horse. He wrote, "A fit of passion is a thing that has no foresight in it, and so we often have to rue the day when we gave way to it. Consequently, when your horse shies at an object and is unwilling to go up to it, he should be shown that there is nothing fearful in it, least of all to a courageous horse like him. But if this fails, touch the object yourself that seems so dreadful to him, and lead him up to it with gentleness." Here was a man training horses for war, warning riders that aggression, with horses anyway, does not pay. Close to Monty Roberts in his thinking, but more than 2,000 years his predecessor, Xenophon seems attuned to horse psychology. Reward him with kindness when he has done what you wish, and admonish him when he disobeys. On the other hand, riders who force their horses by the use of the whip only increase their fear, for they then associate the pain with the thing that frightens them. Such considerate advice would seem only to make sense, but sense is far from common. Our long association with the horse is like a road that here moves cleanly forward and there twists inanely back on itself. The history of horsemanship is less about sugar than pepper, less about light than dark, less about mindful kindness than thoughtless cruelty. Horse trainers of the Roman Empire seem not to have read Xenophon. They would force the horse to the ground, sit on his head, and tie his legs together. The idea was to demoralize the horse, to break his...